Hey everyone, Sleepy Reader here. I am back from my holiday, so I am going to give you a comic book countdown of comics from 2 Wednesdays ago. I actually had read almost all of them the night before we left for our holiday, and I was going to shoot a video. And the last one I just couldn't get through. I was just too tired, and I'll tell you which one that was as I count down through them. So then, yesterday, Sunday, when we got back, I picked up my new comics from this past Wednesday. So I haven't had a chance to read any of those yet. So I will try to do the countdown for each week's worth of comics just because I want to. But it's going to get harder and harder as we go into Christmas time and New Year's. So we'll see what happens. I was in Wisconsin, and I sadly did not get to watch a Packers game with my Wisconsin relatives. I was looking forward to that excitement, but I didn't really know what the football schedule was, and they weren't playing. I did buy some Wisconsin cheese, including a 15-year aged cheddar, which was, and I just tasted it yesterday when we got back. I really loved it. My daughter and wife did not. But that's interesting. I never even thought, usually the very sharp cheddars I get are aged for 2 years. So 15 years is pretty incredible. It was a little bit like a blue cheese in a way, but a lot like a cheddar at the same time. So anyway, with that pointless aside, let's see. Oh, you know what? I made an amateur mistake. I've not counted how many comics I have that I'm counting down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So I got 11 comics. Some very good ones, some surprises a little bit in what ranked low for me. So I'll give you my thoughts, and this ranking is just based on my pleasure at the time I read them. A lot of these I read over a week ago. I've glanced through them again to remind myself of what I thought. So, because I had already kind of stacked them already in an order the night before I left on the vacation. So I put Strayed at number 11. This was that science fiction story with the cat that can astral project. And as the story moves along, I'm just caring less and less. I think there's just one issue left, and it's hard to imagine that I'm going to care any more about the story. And the colors look kind of cool as I flip through. But it just, I don't know. It's just not sticking with me. I don't know what it would take to make this story of this astral projecting cat and the evil sort of dictator type of president of Earth story more interesting. No, there are no parallels to Donald Trump or anything here. I don't know who you'd compare this to. Maybe some Soviet leader like Stalin or something. But anywho, that was in at number 11. A little bit disappointing, in fact, a lot bit disappointing, was Vampirilla number 5. This is the series written by Christopher Priest. And with this issue, it's been a confusing thing to read, and I really lost the thread here, and I really couldn't figure out who the characters were. There's still plenty of interesting little bits, but I need to do more surgery on my pull list, so I have just written a letter to my comic book dealer, my comic book shop owner, to drop this from my pull list. I would say that it felt like this issue was moving on to other plot lines while kind of dropping plot lines from before, as far as I could tell. I just couldn't quite tell what was going on. That's the ultimate sin for me, as you probably, if you watch a lot of these, if I can't tell what's going on, it's really hard to like a comic book. I guess I could tell what was going on in the question. This was a big shock for me. I thought this would be really exciting for me to read. It's written by Jeff Lemire. It's inked by Bill Sienkiewicz. As I flipped through it, it seemed like there was lots of great art, but the pencils are by Dennis Cohen, who's never been one of my favorite pencilers back in the 80s and 90s or whenever his main heyday was. He's not a very exciting penciler to me, but with the other creators on it, and I didn't think he was a bad penciler or anything in the past. But the story, I think partially the art's to be faulted, but maybe the writing more. I'm not sure. The story just doesn't have much pizzazz for me. I don't feel the character at all. I don't buy into his world where he's some kind of TV celebrity commentator. The elements just don't click. I would never have guessed this was written by Jeff Lemire if you just handed me this comic and said, guess who wrote this? I don't know who I would have guessed, but someone bland. So yeah, it might be going in an interesting direction. Another thing I have to say is the colors are very good. Another thing I have to say is that maybe this length format is hard for me. It's a 22 page, 25 page, even 30 page chapters kind of work for me. But this is like a 48 page or 54 page chapter. And it just felt like it dragged and it went on too long. And I kind of had that feeling when I was reading some of these other oversized Black Label books. They might be better as shorter chapters or written as with 2 chapters with a cliffhanger in the middle or something. I don't know. The pacing just feels wrong. Maybe it's because most of these comic book writers are used to a kind of 22-page pace, and so they don't have the right approach for these longer pieces. I'm not sure. Or maybe it's just me. But so this ranked down at number 9 out of 11. At number 10 out of 11, number 8 out of 11, wake up, Damien, wake up, sleepy reader, was Olympia, which I sort of had high hopes for just because even on the back cover they say it's, where is it? They talk about a Kirby-inspired scale. I kind of imagined Jack Kirby meets Jeff Lemire or something from the sample art I'd seen and the like, or maybe a little bit of that, what's he called? Tom Scioli, American Barbarian type of thing. So the art was kind of fun. It's very loose, nice colors and everything. But I felt like the story was kind of coasting about a boy. It's kind of a story about a boy, and his fantasies. Kind of a story about this god from some Olympus, Asgard type of place. But it certainly didn't, for me, evoke Kirby very much. And it just didn't evoke a lot of excitement. It was okay. I can't decide whether I'll get future issues. I guess I will because it's on my pull list. But we'll see how long I stick with it. It was certainly a bargain, a very thick issue for $4. That's a great cover. A great splash page. I think the action just doesn't really come alive. And the character beats were so minor or few in this story, so not a whole lot happened here. We got a kid. He reads a comic book. The hero from his comic book shows up. Then the villain from the comic book shows up. End of chapter. So what was that? Was number 8. And number 7 was Jimmy Olsen, or Superman's Pal Jimmy Olsen by Matt Fraction and Lieber and Fairbairn, the colorist. Fun art, mostly fun story, but kind of just it feels like it's just drifting about it. A Jimmy Olsen story should be something, a modern day Jimmy Olsen story done funny should be something that ranks really high for me, and somehow it doesn't. Here he's making fun of Batman. Of course he makes fun of Superman. There were some cool little twists. This guy that no one seemed to care except for Jimmy that he died, not even Clark and Lois, turns out not to be dead in kind of a clever twist. I did like that. But mostly it feels too meandering, and the jokes they're the kind of jokes that are, let's make fun of this, let's make fun of that. It's I don't know. It's not what I wished for Jimmy Olsen. So let's see, 11, 10, 9, 8. That was 8. In at number 7 is King Thor with his endless fight against the God Butcher. Again, the sort of the same old story. Incredible art. Really loved it. Stretched out story, as I already thought in issue 2. I had fun reading it. Obviously, I've ranked it kind of in the middle of the pack. But nothing kind of surprising to me. I just expected them to sort of twist and stretch out the basic story here, which is a fight between Thor and the God Butcher. And it was nice to see a little more feature on Thor's daughters, and that was cool. Again, I'd mentioned in another video kind of the problem with the end of the universe kind of stories. Far, far in the future, the universe is going to end. Okay, yeah, but that seems kind of fair. The universe should end someday, I suppose. Anyway, this comic is well worth it just for the Esad Ribic art. I've liked a lot of his art, but I feel like he's been especially strong with this comic, and I'd be sad to see him become just a cover artist, although he's a great cover artist. That was in at number 7. No, that was in at number 6. In at number 5 was Lucifer. This often would rank in my top 2, but this is the beginning of a new story arc, and I wasn't as quite into it as I have a feeling as it progresses, I'll get more into it again. I did have a moment of thinking, well, maybe I want to drop this. Basically, Lucifer builds a house, and Lucifer seems pretty evil. He doesn't seem to have a side to him that's sympathetic at all, and maybe that's part of my problem. Also, there was more of an emphasis on how he's an abstract, godlike being, where we see him just kind of floating around in the universe and stuff. So that sense of distance from Lucifer and from the events going on in the story, we seem to have something, we're working our way up to something called the Great Hunt, where I guess a bunch of other mythological characters will be hunting Lucifer, I believe. And I guess Lucifer is missing Mazikeen and is trying to find her. So that seems to be about it. I don't know. It just didn't grab me as much. For instance, I liked in at number 4, I liked Once and Future quite a bit better. This is just progressing the plot, adding a few more characters, I think, as we go along. And there's not a whole lot to say about it. But I think we're going to very slowly turn up a little bit about the grandmother's past, and thus sort of our hero's past, or his origin and who he really is. I mean, he is a college professor, a handsome young college professor whose grandmother turns out to have been Buffy the Vampire Slayer of British mythology. But anyway, that was fun. Even more fun for me, and I've seen some other people be sort of middling on this, but Rai, written by Dan Abnett and art by Juan Jose Ripe, who is a longtime favorite artist of mine. I haven't seen a lot of art from him lately. I think he had an exclusive contract with Valiant, but now but it seems like he was on vacation, or maybe I just missed the Valiant books he was doing after Britannia. But now he's back with a slightly different style, it feels like. And I thought at first maybe it's all the colorist, Andrew Dahlhaus, who does a great job. But I have this variant version. It's called the subscription, the pre-order edition. And it has a lot of process art in it. And in it, I can see here in the black and white art that a lot of what we're seeing in the color was kind of set up with gray tones by Juan Jose Ripe. So it's Mr. Ripe himself who's kind of changing his style from having a bazillion little crosshatches to it more being, well, shades of gray in the original art and then shades of color shaping things. So that's interesting to see that process. So this is an interesting thing where I think it was 12 issues that I told my shop I want the pre-order edition, which means I've committed to pre-order all 12 issues of Rai, and I get a different cover, which doesn't really matter to me much, but I also get a sort of insert in the middle, which is like the DVD commentary. So I'm guessing that this bit right here is the insert that they just published in. So I get these 8 extra pages, and I get that different cover. It is a cool cover. I like it. But so one reason I liked Rai is it's post-apocalyptic, sort of, at least in this issue, a Mad Max kind of post-apocalypse, with 2 androids wandering around, and one considers himself human and the other doesn't. And the earlier model looks like a little boy, sort of, but is the more robotic of the two. And Rai is sort of more the philosophical type. And I love those kinds of stories about androids and stuff, and putting them in this post-apocalyptic future just seemed really cool and fun to me. So I really enjoyed it, although it's so far a fairly simple story. But Dan Abnett is always a solid storyteller. Not always flashy, but in my experience, he always seems to deliver a nice, solid story. I guess I shouldn't show you the last page there. Not that there's quite a bit maybe that I did not understand because I have not read Rai's previous storylines in the modern day Valiant. I don't know if I even read much Rai in the original Valiant, although I read a lot, or I thought I read a lot in the original Valiant, a lot of their comics. In at number 2, and really, even though it's a much more complex story and part of a longer story, these two felt pretty equal in my own personal enjoyment of them. Maybe because of the Juan Jose Rai art. This does have Joe Bennett, and the Immortal Hulk is always better with their standard artist, Joe Bennett, at the wheel. He just seems to be the right guy. And frankly, because I read this now quite a while ago, I'm just recalling kind of that this was a good continuation of the story. We're getting more of the evil of this head of Roxxon, who is Taurus. Is that what he is? Or is he the Minotaur? He's the Minotaur. And but he has another name, and I just can't remember that right now. I'm just thumbing through and enjoying the art. I'm sorry. But yeah, this was a good issue. I think the issue before this was a little bit of a letdown, but this was cool. I feel like maybe I will want to reread this before the next issue came out, because like I say, my memory's kind of fading. In at number 1, as it often is, was Ice Cream Man. A very creepy, disturbing story, to a large part about parenthood and how far will you go for your children. The character in here goes very far, and his child is very not what you hope your children will become. And this included diary entries, which I enjoyed, and it worked well. Sometimes extra text pieces really don't work inside comics, but in this case, it worked really well. I guess I shouldn't give away any more. This is definitely one of those standalone issues that's not, at least in any way you can tell, part of the continuity that we've seen begin to build up in Ice Cream Man, which is fine. Just one of the best comics out there, not a superhero comic, a great horror comic, unique, super strong entry into the world of indie comics. Oh, this one actually comes with alternate sketches and stuff. I haven't seen that before in Ice Cream Man. I used to, when I first started on YouTube and got real excited meeting lots of people on the internet, I used to start tracking sales, looking at sales of things, and trying to figure out which books I liked were selling okay and stuff. And I just kind of stopped doing that. I'm not sure at what point. There was even a point where I used to, on Twitter, put up some highlights of looking. I would look for comics whose sales were going up rather than going down, and I would highlight them and copy and paste them onto Twitter to show to my Twitter friends. But you can still follow me on Twitter. I have an Instagram account, but so far Instagram just hasn't clicked for me. I still don't get it. I find Twitter a very good way to communicate with my comic book friends, both on the Twitter's personal messages and the regular Twitter messages, depending on the kinds of things that need to be communicated. So if you're on Twitter, try following me. I basically try to just talk about comics, although every once in a while I throw in something about the environment because I'm kind of upset about that. But there you go. And I try not to follow. It's weird how on Twitter you start accumulating other people who are following you, and it looks like they discuss comics, so you follow them. And sometimes I have to cut those people. But it's also weird. I have my core, what I think of as my core Twitter people, who are people I know via YouTube that I follow on Twitter. But then all these other people show up, and I'm not quite sure who they are because they'll have names like, Batman in the 90s or whatever. Not that there is one of those that's following me with that particular name, but that kind of thing, and you just don't know who they are or what they're really about. But I've been pretty successful at mostly focusing my Twitter on just comics, and I know there's lots of crap on Twitter that people don't like, but I miss most of that. Well, while I'm wasting time and babbling on, let me show you what I picked up yesterday, which was this past Wednesday's comics that I hope to be reading during the week. Before the next Wednesday's comics come, we've got Freedom Fighters number 11, so this is almost over. It could all fall apart on me with a bad issue 12 and a bad ending, but right now I feel like this is my favorite of the DC Comics that I'm aware of. Curse Words, this is cover A. When I first saw it, I thought, that's got to be a cover B. I haven't looked inside yet. I'm a little afraid to. I've been loving Curse Words. I think it's really close to an ending. This is issue 25. Could it be the end? Are they going to end on issue 25? I can't remember. Or if they're going to go all the way to 30. Just can't remember. But Curse Words just has been zooming upward. Instead of getting, some things plateau or start going down after a while, Curse Words I keep enjoying more. I love, have been loving, Justice League Dark, which in its Year of the Villains version is Injustice League Dark. These acetate covers are very cool, although this is the first acetate cover I have owned. Because I'm not getting so much DC anymore. I haven't gotten. I kind of makes me want to just buy some more acetate covers, but I think they don't cost any extra. They even have an acetate cover on the ad for Superman Year 1 on the back, which I thought was funny, but kind of a cool effect. My daughter, who's a big Superman fan, hates the way John Romita draws Superman, by the way. I don't blame her. Maybe I should read this first. Criminal. We're getting near the end of the current arc, which has been very good and has been building. I'm not quite sure where it's going, but it's been really good. Love the way it's been giving us so many different points of views on the continuous story. This is weird. So this is the last issue, I believe, of Tommy Gun Wizards, but they've changed the title to Wizards, and they put this. I wonder if they even wrote Tommy Gun Wizards up here and then at the last minute had to change it. Something must be going on legally. They can't call it Tommy Gun Wizards anymore. I've been enjoying this one a lot. Valkyrie number 5. This has been fun. I think I'm still eventually going to have a discussion on this with Longbox Review on his podcast, Eric's podcast. We'll see if that really happens. Space Riders number 1. I hope this is actually a new thing and not like a reprint that I'm being stuck with, but Space Riders Vortex of Darkness. I think that is new. So Love the Space Riders, especially for the art. I've heard rumors that Black Mask was no more, but I guess they've started publishing comics again. Shazam #8, another favorite of my DC comics, but sadly no Dale Eaglesham on the credits here. I've seen listings for issues after this that show Dale Eaglesham on it. I wonder what the story is there, because this is not coming out very often. It seemed like it would give Dale enough time to draw it. And not that there's anything wrong with the other artists who work on it, but Dale has such a specific style that's, which we can see on the cover, that's what I want this run of Shazam to be. It's hard to shift gears. Second Coming, I'm neither excited nor unexcited for this at this point. It's been an okay comic. I'm very excited for Resident #5. I'm very nervous how this will end. Nice the way they semi-wrap around cover here. Very nervous about how this is end. It's been developing into a very creepy horror story, but there's so many threads dangling from issue 4. It's hard to imagine one issue wrapping it up. Wow, now there's a great cover. Of course, this is an old Frank Frazetta painting, which somehow this comic book, The Creeps, gets rights to a lot of Frank Frazetta. I wonder if they give the Frazetta Museum free advertising or something along those lines. So generally, I'm happy to get The Creeps. Usually it's fun, but sometimes kind of silly. In its reverent attempt at reviving the exact feel of Warren comics, eerie and creepy, from the good old days. Swamp Thing Giant, I guess there's a Walmart edition and a direct-to-market edition, so this must be the direct-market edition. And I think we get some new stories. Yeah, 2 new stories. One of them by Mark Russell. I'm curious what Mark Russell will do with the Swamp Thing. I guess he's already done another Swamp Thing story that I didn't love that much, now that I think of it. And I picked up Doctor Doom #2. I haven't read Doctor Doom #1 yet, which is why you haven't heard me talk about it. And I picked up The Dollhouse #1, which I missed when it originally came out. I don't really like these covers, but the interiors by Peter Gross look very appealing to me. I'm a big Peter Gross, Mike Carey fan from their previous works together. It looks like Gross's artwork has evolved a bit, but in a good way, so I'm not worried about that. The colors look very good. Is Vince Locke or Chris Peter the colorist? I don't see the credits. Maybe they're at the back of the comic. The credits are just nowhere easy to... So Peter Gross layouts, Vince Locke finishes. So when someone's listed as finishes, layouts mean very loose pencils, and finishes mean that a lot more of the creation of the look of the art is done by the person doing the inking. Chris Peter colors, very nice colors. Todd Klein letters, can't go wrong there. Someone named Jessica Dalva doing the covers, and nothing bad about the cover, but the feel of it just is not a vibe that I'm into, and certainly doesn't look like it matches the interior art. So that's what I've got to read. I will be back hopefully soon with another video. I hope your comic book life is going well.